effective now, for posterity. So this will be available for future reference and future use. And a little bit of information just about this particular program. Again, it's the new professionals orientation, and the LAMP committee or library administration committee usually had been the founders of this particular, the runners of this particular program for a long time. And it was only until this year that we decided, you know what? There's no reason why on this particular panel it should just be all directors. It should really consist of other individuals on the panel, because you can have a really successful career as a librarian in roles other than being a director. So we reached out to the Buckles Member Services Committee, and they were kind enough to provide some willing participants on the panel. Erin Hughes is the director of the Woodridge Library, and she is the co-chair of Member Services Committee. Erin, do you want to say a few words?
Sure. So as Allison said, my name's Erin. I'm a director, but I have worked in every single version of a library that you can work in, including academics, including public, including MAWA, which is where I met Allison. She is an awesome mentor. Love her, love her. I've done shelving, I've done circulation, I've done programming, I've done reference. So I had kind of a zigzaggy path to becoming a director. So I kind of know a little bit about everything. As far as member services is concerned, we are a group that is basically the fun part of Buckles. We organize a lot of the happy hours, and we did a picnic at the park. It's really fun. So if anybody's interested in reaching out to us to see if you'd like to join our committee, we are always looking for new members. So that's pretty much it. And if anybody has questions for me or anything about member services or my journeys or whatever, please feel free.
Great. Thanks, Erin. So just a little bit of housekeeping. We aren't a huge group, but we're big enough that if everybody could stay muted during the various talking portions, just to cut down on feedback, that would be great. And if you have any questions or comments or resources you want to share with the group, feel free to use the chat feature, and that information in the chat will be shared with the membership as well. So on that note, I want to introduce Dave Hansen, who is the big man at Buckles. Dave, if you'd like to say a few words.
Thank you. I'm just tall. That's really it. I'm excited to have you all here today. You know, I was thinking about The Hobbit as I was getting ready to talk to everybody. I know there's a new thing on Netflix, but I always want to remind everybody, you know, when you're a new professional, you never know what's going to knock on your door. And I think that's an apropos thing for library work. You never know what's going to knock on your door, and it's always an amazing journey. And literally at the end of your story, it is likely you may save the world. And people always say, well, that's impossible. I said, trust me, the amount of times librarians save the world is insane. And it's not always directors. It's oftentimes folks who are just making the right decision at the right time. If you've ever heard of the Connecticut Six, if you've ever thought about the people who identified items being missing from a presidential archive, and I'm not talking about the one today, by the way, this is what librarians do. So one of the really cool things, and I applaud you for coming today to learn a little bit more, because today you've taken that first step and you answered the door. I will be the tall, white-haired person who came into the door and said, go take an adventure, but have your own Hobbit adventure, remember, and it's okay to save the world. So thank you for being here, and thank you for taking the journey.
All right. Thank you, Dave. Next, I'd like to introduce Adele Puccio, who is another big wig at Buckles. Adele?
Hi, thank you. No, I'm Adele Puccio. I'm the director in Fairlawn. I want to say that whatever you do, reach out, network with everyone else. Doing things like this is great. Joining member services is great. Always reach out and discuss things with everyone else, because you'll find out new ways of doing things that you might not learn if you're on your own. And you never know, networking can always help you move up as well. Similar to Erin, I've got a very varied background. I've worked in almost every single department in lots of different libraries, including academic for a short while. And that led me to where I am today. And I know that no matter what, I can fill in anywhere, which is always fun. But if you ever want anything to bounce anything off of me or anyone else, most of us really are here to listen at any time. And thank you and enjoy this program.
All right, thank you, Adele. So at this point, I want to introduce the various members on the panel, and I'm just going to go alphabetically, and they'll give you a little bit of information, and then once we are done with that, we'll go into some of the submitted questions that some of you had sent in when you registered. So the first person I want to introduce is Tara Cooper. Tara, would you like to tell the group about yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Tara Cooper. I'm the director of the Johnson Public Library in Hackensack, or the SAC, as we are informally known. This is my 20th year in libraries. Somehow it doesn't feel, anyway, I just realized that this morning and I had a little bit of a moment, but just like a lot of folks before me have said, I've had kind of a varied background in libraries. I've worked in public and academic libraries, in youth services, reference, administration, small libraries, rural libraries, suburban libraries, now here in an urban library in Hackensack. I am so grateful for all of the experiences and opportunities that librarianship has given me. I've met so many wonderful people throughout my career, and I feel just thankful to be a part of such a great, just like a great field. And I'm really excited to talk to all of you guys today and see kind of what you're interested in doing. And hopefully we have some answers to some questions that'll help you and inspire you and keep you motivated on your path to whatever your end game is in librarianship.
All right, thank you, Tara. Next up, I'd like to introduce Amanda. I'm sorry if I slaughter your last name. Eigen?
That's it.
Okay, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda Eigen. I am not a library director. I am head of library services for Maplewood Library. Like Tara, I have been in librarianship for a little over 20 years. Actually, I didn't even realize it until you said it. But I started in school librarianship, and I moved into public librarianship very, very part-time at Maplewood when my youngest was 10 months old. And she is now going to be 19 in December, and I am at Maplewood. I have worn, like everybody, it seems to be a theme, many, many hats. I was head of circulation, head of technical services, head of adult services, just a part-time reference librarian. And I actually started in journalism, and the connection there is that to Adele's point of reaching out, I think the thing that makes librarianship so fabulous is that we love to share information, and we love it when people ask questions and we can help them with the answer. So in addition to reaching out for the purpose of networking, if you don't know something, if you want to know something, I think you couldn't find yourself a better group of people to help you navigate your professional life. And I'm happy to be a part of that group.
Fantastic. Thank you, Amanda. And to echo on that, again, Buckles is a very incestuous environment. Everybody kind of floats around from various library to library. And, pre-pandemic, we would host this program in person. And again, it gives you the opportunity to really meet each other and kind of build relationships. So we're hopeful that next year we can do that. So pardon my little derailment. I'd like to introduce next Larissa Lightman. Larissa, if you'd like to introduce yourself. Oh, you're muted.
Hi, I'm Larissa Lightman. I recently started a new job at the Rivervale Library as an adult services librarian. I've been working in libraries ever since college. I worked in the science library at my college. Took a few years doing other things not library related, but then decided to go back to libraries and and got my master's, then worked in a corporate library for a year, then took time off to have children, then went back to libraries again, working in Montvale Library part-time. I worked there 21 years. And then recently I decided it was time for me to go back into full-time work. So I switched to Rivervale Library. I'm there full-time now. I'm having a great time. I've had a great time all along. The time just flies and people are so nice. And I've done a lot of interesting things. I've just besides my typical library duties, I've coordinated ESL programs. I've done book groups. I've written newsletters. And I just really enjoy being part of the library world.
All right, great. Thank you, Larissa. And finally, I want to introduce Elizabeth Portelli from the Fair Lawn Library. Elizabeth?
Hi, how are you? So I do reference and YA here in Fair Lawn. I started in libraries about 22 years ago. When I was 16, I actually started here in Fair Lawn in our children's room, and I loved it so much I knew that I wanted to be a librarian back then. I've left and come back several times, and while like in college I was in an art library. I was a page. I've worked part-time in Ridgewood as a reference librarian, in Hawthorne as CERC. And I've been here in Fair Lawn full-time for 11 years. Oh, because when Chris Christie made all the cuts to schools about 12 years ago, I was a middle school librarian in Lincoln Park. So, but I love public librarianship. I love the flexibility of it, that, we get to choose what interests us and kind of make it work here at the library. So I do a lot of book clubs. I do adult and teen book clubs. I have a very successful teen advisory board, and I do a lot of other teen programs like crafts and things. And I run the ESL program here at the library. It's small, but it's very popular. We have waiting lists for all of our ESL classes. I've done an ESL conversation group. And I just really like helping people. So I think to work in public librarianship, you have to really like people. You have to be very patient. So if you are not a patient person, I think that would be my advice, is to try and do everything you can to sort of learn patience. But it's very rewarding, I think. When I have a person come back and say, thank you so much, I was able to get that job because you helped me do XYZ, it makes you feel good. So I think that's it for me. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you. So again, when we sent out the general invitation email, people were invited to submit questions. So we'll go through some of those questions. And again, as we go through the conversation, if there's questions that you have, feel free to put them in the chat, and we will get to all of them. And again, the purpose of this particular program is just to find out a little bit just about how to get your bearings, how to plot out your career, any questions you have about how to advance, best strategies, how to juggle school with work. So in no particular order, I'd like to ask the panelists the following question. Are most Buckles libraries willing to train new librarians who have limited experience in public libraries? Or I guess we'll kind of expand that. What is the training like based on your experiences for those who are relatively new to the field of librarianship?
I can.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So I would say, I think when you're hiring, it's more important to hire the right person who has the right attitude and seems like they would like the job more than their experience necessarily. Some people just haven't had the opportunity to have experience like that. So I would say in general, most libraries would love to train the person if they're the right person for the job, if they're the right fit. Not every library has the capacity to train people. Maybe they have a very small staff and they need someone who's gonna be able to work right away. I think that might be the only limiting factor. If they need someone who's going to hit the ground running because their staff's only 6 or 8 people, I could see how that would be an issue. But in general, I think libraries are always, they'd much rather have someone who's the best fit, the right person, than necessarily someone just happens to have worked in libraries for a long time. You can't teach someone personality or attitude or work ethic. That's just something that comes with the individual. At least that's how I feel about it.
Or patience.
Or patience. Or
Yeah,
sense of humor.
Yeah, I think to your point, sometimes it depends on where the library is at in terms of other staffing and the ability to train. So that has played a role in our hiring over the years, but it's not. That is not the main.
Right.
That's never the quintessential piece. We're a union shop, so we are contractually obligated to open our hiring initially internally. And so we do experience movement that way, but that opens up, there's a lot of fluidity then, because it opens up other positions that might be better suited to a person who doesn't have the training. So it goes round and round, but we're always open to training. And to the point of training, if I could just add, I have found it very useful to have everyone on my staff train someone new, because everyone has different skill sets and different ideas that are all useful and helpful in how they approach working with the public.
Okay, great. I guess for the smaller libraries where there might not be as many, like a chain of command, are there things that do you think that newer librarians can ask their coworkers rather than the supervisor? Are there certain things that they can do to be of assistance or to help themselves with their training?
Oh, I think to Amanda's point, you really should learn from everyone or as many people as you can. I mean, I've worked in small libraries here and in other systems where we literally everyone just did everything. It was, the chain of command kind of goes out the window when you're 5 or 6 people. It doesn't really matter. You might be like answering a reference question and then faxing something and like unclogging a toilet or whatever. I mean, it just, right? I mean, that's just kind of how it goes sometimes. I'm definitely an urban library person and I enjoy working in a larger library, but I learned more working in smaller libraries because you have the opportunity to, everyone's like, yes, because you have the opportunity to work in basically every department and have a lot of contact with different kinds of people in different situations. So for sure, you definitely learn not necessarily just from your supervisor, you learn a lot from your coworkers. And some of your coworkers are the people with the institutional knowledge. Like, let's be real, I've been here for 4 years. I have staff here for 40 years. New staff are going to learn a lot of things from their coworkers that's institutional that they're going to receive better from them than for me, who's actually like one of the newer people here. So.
Okay, great.
And I would like to add something.
Sure.
Hi, so I'm a small library director, and what I have learned from my experience is that you have to be open to, ask your supervisor, your director for training. Sometimes small libraries like me, we don't offer official training, but whenever we have a new staff member, we spend some time, we are a staff of 12 people, so everybody spends time with the new staff member, but there has to be a willingness to learn. That's very important when you are interviewing a candidate or when you're being interviewed by a library, to show your willingness that you're ready to work in different departments. That was my biggest skill set when I was offered this position as director, because this is my first director. It's been 3 years now, but it was my first director position. And starting in a small library, I've worked circulation, and I also attend board meetings, and I also attend the council breakfast. So willingness to ask is always going to bring you a long way. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Perinda.
Just one more thing on that. When I started in libraries, my first job was in a public library while I was in library school. And there was a very, very set hierarchical structure to that particular library. And I think to a lot of libraries at that time, 20 years ago, I think there's been a shift away from that. And I think it's a really good one. And I would actually say that's something when you're considering a new position, you want to be aware. I'm not necessarily saying don't go for it, but be aware if that hierarchical structure is still in play, because it can be limiting in how much you're allowed to do and how much you're allowed to learn.
I just, having just switched jobs after 21 years and being a new person, which was a really strange experience for me after all of this time. You know, I would definitely recommend asking everyone on the staff for help, because you can learn something new from everyone. And I would just, whatever anyone was doing, I would say, oh, you know, can I watch you do that? There was new fax software. I'd be like, can I watch you do that? Can I watch you use the copier, because it was a different copier than the one I had used? And whatever it was, I would just ask different people, and that's just a great way to learn. And most people are willing to help you and teach you things.
All right, great. So let's change gears a little bit. And I think some of this might have come up during the various panelists' introductions, so we can delve a little bit deeper. Other than public librarianship, what other ways can we use our library science degree? Unconventional ways can be included. So those of you who have worked in other areas, go right ahead. Let her rip.
So my cousin is actually also a librarian. He got his MLS down in Kentucky, and he is now the archivist at the Metropolitan Opera. And it is an incredible job. And he was kind enough to take me backstage, which was just like, I was like, oh my God. And he's like, the props. And I was like, the compressed storage. This is incredible. But that's one of the ways that you can kind of make a turn with librarianship. You can go into archival sciences, you can go into museums. There are different levels of things you can do. And also, let's not discount school librarianship, because those guys are on the front lines, killing it every day, making sure our kids have books in their hands and that things aren't getting banned. So just a couple of little ideas about how you can use your degree in a way that's not technically librarian, you know, so.
Okay.
I worked a long time ago for a corporate library. This was when I first graduated, and it was a pharmaceutical consulting firm. And my job was basically to do searches for all the PhDs and pharmacists who worked there, to find them articles, to find them abstracts. They'd give me a topic. I'd get all the information together for them. So librarians are needed in all areas. And then just, I happen to have a friend out in Ohio who she knows that, like, she lives right near where Find Your Way is, and right near where Overdrive is. And there are a lot of companies that specialize in providing materials for libraries. And all of those companies, I believe, hire librarians, and some of the work might be remote. So I think there are a lot of options out there.
I feel like working in libraries has made me a good problem solver, and also customer service wise, I feel like I do a really good job. So I feel like any job that requires, like, one of the, you know, skills that are listed, customer service, problem solver, I think you can kind of, I would feel like pretty confident stepping into comfortably. So maybe not the MLS necessarily, but the experience in libraries that you get can definitely be translated to a lot of customer service jobs.
I went to school with someone who now works for a law firm in Baltimore that subpoenas the recordings of prison calls. And then they transcribe the calls, and they're usually working to get people who were wrongfully convicted exonerated. So right now they're working on a case for this gentleman who was wrongly convicted in Detroit for a murder he didn't commit and was in jail for 22 years. And now the law firm has subpoenaed all these. So they're reviewing calls from like 2013 between him and other people. And she uses her, they hired her as a librarian to organize all the transcripts and all the data and all the information, and like cross-check who he's been speaking to and for how long, and to build all these connections, like map it all out. Because he's suing the city of Detroit. Let's hope he wins a lot of money for being in jail wrongly for, 22 years. But she had worked in public libraries in downtown Baltimore for years, like on the bookmobile doing outreach, and just got totally burnt out. and left public librarianship for a little while. She actually is going back to public libraries now, but this was like the job that she had in between, and she'll probably stay on with them part-time because most of the work is remote. But I thought that was totally fascinating. I never would have thought that that would be a job a librarian would have.
Can I just jump in and give a couple of, so A, saving the world, going back to Frodo, this is what the librarian's doing. But B, couple of things that you may not really think about. There are things that are called library support consortium around. They're not exactly public libraries, but they do hire folks. There's going to be an opening for the LMXAC executive director. I would also tell you, if there is there is a librarian. There is literally a baking library in the middle of Kansas. I am not kidding you. There is a person who gets paid. Now, understand you have to be willing to geographically relocate for some of these positions. But you get that there is actually a librarian for NPR's All Things Considered, right? If you get to the end, and many librarians do, there is actually, they talk about a librarian who's there. They do fact checking. You have a whole bunch of other things. I would also put a huge shout out for those of you with technical skills. The ILS and the library services sector, the amount of librarians that are hired by Innovative Services, which is the big software that runs here, is actually pretty high. The amount of librarians that Overdrive does. There are literally all your book jobbers that you probably order from, they hire librarians too. I was with somebody I graduated with who actually works for Biblioteca. She was with 3M, she's now with Biblioteca. All of those service companies that work with public libraries, they also hire librarians. So as you think about your pantheon of what you could do, I just want to throw out some of those things that, that we sometimes forget.
And to piggyback on that, if you have an interest in travel or living abroad or being, a librarian, being the international sector, Biblioteca is a European base where it was a European-based company. There are these same companies in Europe and all over the world. So
these are all great suggestions. Thank you, guys. So let's go back to some interpersonal questions when you're actually working in a library. Somebody wants to know, how do you deal with employees who are problematic? I have an employee who's been at the library for a very long time and does not want to adapt to change. So I'm assuming that means, not necessarily as a manager what you would do, but if you're working in a smaller library and a coworker is reluctant to change or adapt, so, and also as a manager, what you would do. So kind of do both of those scenarios. Tara?
Go if you want. This is like, no one wants to answer this question. It's really hard. So first of all, the two groups of folks that are hardest to motivate or to manage are people who've been in their position a very, very long time. They're counting their days till they retire. They're just like showing up physically, but maybe not in any other way. They are bored. They've been doing the same job for a long time. They don't want to learn new stuff because they're almost ready to leave, right? So that's a really hard group of folks to manage. And not all people at the end of their career are like that. I'm just saying there are some people that get that way by the end. Anyone who's like, you ever seen a kindergarten teacher who's been a kindergarten teacher for too long, right? Nobody wants that kindergarten teacher, that kind of thing. And then the other group that can be hard are some people that have just like limited job experience and aren't used to normal, showing up on time, doing their reports on time, filling things out on time. They just haven't gotten like into that flow yet in their work life for whatever reason. So the two ends of the spectrum are usually the hardest to manage. And then everyone in the middle is like a bell curve, just like anything else. When you say a staff member who's problematic, like problematic how? Because if their work product is problematic, or there's like a disciplinary issue, or they're late all the time or something, that's easier than if they're just like a grump, because you can't coach personality. It's hard to change someone's attitude. Like if they're coming in and they're doing all of their work and they're checking all the boxes, it's really hard. There's not like a great way to make them improve their attitude pretty much. So there are one of two things you can do. If they're a super toxic person, you need to just like limit the amount of toxicity they share with everyone else. If it's just that they're unhappy in their job and they're bored, maybe see if there's a project you can give them, ask them what they're interested in working on, and maybe give them something that they actually want to do. Maybe no one's asked them that in a long time. Like, are you interested in doing a display or a club or something? But if they're problematic in the way that they need to not be in their position anymore, then everyone will tell you the same thing. You need to just document everything, every interaction. If they're written up, it needs to be formal. We're a union in civil service, so we take very specific steps when we have a disciplinary problem. Other libraries may handle it a little bit differently. I mean, I think communication goes a long way, especially if you're new and you're new working with them. You need to talk to them and get to know them and kind of figure out what the problem is. But yeah, it's hard. Like, humans are hard, and everyone's got, life is tough and you don't know what's going on beyond them at work. So give people some grace and then try to figure out what's going on. And if it's something you can fix, that's great. It's not always going to be though. And in that case, you just want to limit their toxic exposure to other folks pretty much.
And some of it might actually stem from fear too, because
Yeah.
if an individual's been at the library for a long time and they're surrounded, or they have a bunch of new librarians or somebody who's in library school, and like the person in library school is learning a ton of different ideas and new services.
It's intimidating.
Yeah. So it could be coming from a place of fear or just anxiety. Because maybe their tech skills aren't as savvy as their coworkers. So that could be it. Again, the way I'm interpreting this question, it's an attitude, not necessarily poor
Right,
performance.
work product. Yeah. I mean, that's the harder one to
Right.
deal with.
Right. But I guess, like, if it's a coworker or somebody in your department, that's a tricky situation, because you don't want to overstep your bounds, but at the same time you want to try to foster a sense of like, this is exciting, like, we're doing these new things to better the library, to better the community. So it's kind of like a mental shift that's required. Oh, Amanda?
Yeah, so I think it's always helpful to know your policies and your codes of conduct and that sort of thing, backwards and forwards, and your mission. If you know your mission and your vision, and let that be your guide when you're having conversations with staff members who are underperforming or who their attitude seems to be out of step. Whenever there's a change in policy at the library, it has to kind of be motivated for the good of the library. And if you can put the library first, we're making this change because it's better for the community, or we're making this change because really that's always the answer, right? It's better for the community. It's better for the people that we serve. This will be helpful. So this is why we're doing it. And, you can say to someone, it seems like you're struggling with this. Can you have these amazing skills that you bring to the table, and I'm hoping that you'll share them with people in this new change. I'm, speaking very generally because I don't know the specifics of the situation, but I think if you can put the library first and be positive about what the person brings to the table, because everybody has something to contribute, right? So I think focusing on that. And then there have been instances where somebody has been totally checked out, and I've pulled them aside and sat down and said, you don't need to go into detail, but I do notice that something's going on. Are you okay? Because I do believe, like, we want everyone who comes into our building to have a fresh start each day. If they were difficult the day before, maybe they won't be today as a patron, right? I think we want to offer that to our staff as well, whenever possible.
Elizabeth, Larissa, do either of you want to chime in?
I was just going to say, because I've had coworkers who've been like resistant to technology updates and changes. And I think you're right. I think it does come from a place of fear and anxiety. But you just have to keep trying. I mean, you have to just keep saying, like, this is why we need to do this. This is why it will make life easier. I'll give an example. So when I first started here, there was really no central way to promote things. Like if someone was doing a program, they'd say, you know, to somebody like, oh, can you throw this on the website or this or that? And I was like, let's use like like an Excel spreadsheet, Google Sheets, and we'll like put everything on there, and then everybody can check off when they've put it on social media, when they've done this, when they've done that. And it took a while to get everybody on board with this spreadsheet, but now finally we have like a formal way, rather than just like randomly like stopping somebody and saying like, oh, can you throw my, you know, craft program on the website? So, but I just had to keep, you know, annoying people and saying like, oh, hey, you forgot to use, we call it the doc. You forgot to use the doc. Can you please put it up so I know that I need to do X, Y, and Z, and just like keep communicating with people. Just, you know, be as nice as possible, but also bug people.
Right, politely.
And I think what Amanda said about always putting the library first is so important. It's really great to explain why you're making a change when you make it, not just like, this is our policy now. It has to be like, because of blah, 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 we've decided it will be whatever. This is the best way to go about doing this now. If you make a change arbitrarily without any explanation, it's like really bad for morale and not very nice. I also think if you're new in a position where you're supervising people, don't make any changes right away. Just kind of like chill and observe stuff for several months and see. They may be doing something a certain way because they've tried it 10 different ways and that's the only way that works, and you just don't know that yet because you're new. So don't assume that everything they're doing is, you know, that everything could be approved upon. Some things could be, but other things maybe not. It's best sometimes to just kind of watch and see. And also, if you make too many changes immediately, people are going to be terrified of you and they're going to lose all their comfort in their position. So that's important too.
The one thing I would say, and I saw this in my former job, is that sometimes the people working at the circulation desk would just get burnt out. They'd be very tired from dealing with patrons all the time. Some of them wouldn't take breaks, even though, you know, they were obviously encouraged to. So, you know, I would say to them, you know, go take a break, just take 15 minutes, step away. I guess be aware of when people are feeling burnt out, go help them. Like I would go relieve them sometimes. Yeah, because they do get tired. And they do, like if they've had an encounter with a patron who was difficult, that will wear them out. And sometimes they would get, you know, several patrons in a row who were demanding or who were complaining about things. So I think it's important to just be aware of that, encourage them to take breaks. Maybe don't have people at the desk too long if it's a rough day, you know, like switch them in and out just to prevent burnout.
I'm glad you said that, because one of the next questions kind of ties into that idea, which is, how do you gain the confidence to advocate for yourself in the workplace? To combat burnout, basically. Anybody?
It's really hard and takes a lot of practice and a lot of confidence. And it's not, I was talking to one of my department heads last week because she had to tell someone no. And she's like, I don't like telling people no. And I'm like, yeah, because it sucks. It doesn't feel good to say no. You want to do everything for everyone. We're all in this field because we want to help people. Like, that's what we want to do. So telling someone no, especially a coworker, is like, oh, like it doesn't feel good. But I said, you need to say no to certain things to say yes to other things, right? That's how you have to look at it. So like when I was early in my career, I wanted to say yes to everything because I wanted all the experience I could get. I wanted to have the opportunity to do as much as I could and learn as much as I could. But you can't let it get to a point where you're just totally overwhelmed and have an unsustainable workload because you never say no. And maybe not no, or maybe not right now. Like I can't do that project right now. Maybe when my workload changes or we have some like capacity building with new staff or something, I can, but not at the moment. But it's hard. It's really hard to advocate for yourself. It's by our nature, people in this field are helpers and doers, and they want to just do more and more and more and help as many people as they can. And usually they're putting themselves at the back of the line. So I don't know if that's a good answer, but it takes a lot of practice and it's not easy.
Yeah,
I think having,
oh.
sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I think like you're saying, advocating for yourself is something that comes with time and experience, but it's again, if it's good for the library, you know, that really, you know, if you can say we need to do, and again, I don't know if you're advocating for yourself for time off or for more to do, but anything that's better for the organization, if you can, if it can be framed in that way, then it's going to benefit everybody, not just you. And just knowing also that asking for something and then being told no isn't a mark against you in any kind of way. You know, you can try something and fail at it and still be successful because you tried.
It's also like important to know that people can't read minds. Like you may be afraid to ask for something, you may feel uncomfortable with it, but if you don't ask, you'll never receive. Like it will never be known what you want. And, you know, getting back to the feeling burnt out, like if you don't tell someone you're burnt out and you're just keeping it inside, no one will ever know. And maybe the first few times you have to ask for things, it will be hard, but it gets a little easier each time. So again, and people want to help each other. Like someone else said, this is a field where it's a people-oriented field where people help each other. So whoever it is you're asking is likely someone who will want to help you if they can, if it's feasible.
Elizabeth, did you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything everyone's saying. Just I again, communication, like just everybody's human. You can just talk to people and try not to be scared if, you know, the response. But I mean, just know that everybody else does it too. So it's not a bad thing to advocate for yourself. I do struggle sometimes with saying no, because I it's funny that you were saying that, Sarah, because I have a really hard time. I'm getting better. I think it is a thing that comes with age, but my instinct, I mean, with patrons, with whoever, is like always to want to say yes to things. But I mean, sometimes you physically just can't. Like I can't be in 3 places at once. So, but yeah, I just talk to people. You have to just, even if it's scary, sometimes you just have to be brave and communicate.
Right.
Yeah, and to that point, Elizabeth, like I think it's fine to have a conversation with your supervisor if the conversation is, I really want to be able to do this for you, but I don't see how I'm able to. Can you help me figure out a way to do it? Mm-hmm. And maybe the way is that someone takes on something else that you're doing that could be fielded out to another person if you're the right person to do this new thing or whatever the situation is. But I also, if you are managing people, please like ask your people once in a while if they need anything from you or how they're doing. Because sometimes if they are afraid to say anything to you, just you saying, hey, how are you today? Or like, do you need anything? They might actually be like, actually, I'm terrible and I need to talk to you. Or there's something I need help figuring out. Like it's, you know, because it's sometimes people are timid, right, to advocate or to ask for something that they need.
And I just want to just echo, I forgot who said it, might have been Larissa, but you know, if you have an idea and you're sharing it with your supervisor or director and you're told no, again, don't take it personally, because it could very well be that the context or the timing is not right. and it could just be, or maybe the personnel situation is not right. So again, it might have nothing to do with you, really. So don't feel discouraged, especially if it's an idea that does, provide, value to the community and whatnot. It could very well be that there's other things at play at the top level that you're just not aware of, that you don't really need to be aware of, quite frankly. All right. So at this point, if anybody has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll discuss. Again, if anybody's got any questions about, what's it like working in a big library versus a smaller library, differences between, adult services, youth services. Okay, here we go. All right. So Lisa, does anyone have any advice for part-timers? How to keep yourself organized and stay on top of things when you're not at work every day? Anybody from the panel or any participants, actually, because I know that there's several of you that do work part-time or work at various libraries at the same time. Advice for part-timers?
I can jump in if nobody else. Okay. So we have a smaller part-time pool now than we used to, but pre-pandemic we had quite a large part-time pool. And it is challenging from the manager standpoint to make sure, because there's a lot that flies across the desk, especially for CERC on a regular basis. And just to make sure that everyone is in the same loop, for part-time, I think, making sure that changes and updates are communicated effectively, not just from person to person on shifts, right? But, we use Slack, and I found that to be very effective in terms of communicating, but even a general email. When I was head of CERC, we did like a general, I don't know if it was a weekly email, but I feel like Christine Awanya's on here. She can jump in and put me straight. But we did everything in email, and it was very, very hard. That was my first department head position. It was very hard to make sure that everybody was aware of the same thing. So I think as a part-timer, it's kind of helpful if you just ask when you come into the building, is there anything I need to know? What's going on? Or is there a place that I can check for information? And that may be, just kind of a wake-up call for your supervisor to think about, oh, hey, we need to do that.
I was part-time for 21 years in Montvale. I worked 17 hours a week, so I was there half-time. I had a lot of responsibility. I was doing a lot of things. I really enjoyed it. One thing that I would do is I would always let patrons know my schedule, because I had a lot of patrons who would come to see me all the time. So, I would say, okay, I'm not here Fridays, or I'm not here evenings. Like sometimes I write down my hours for them, because my hours were the same every week. And that would help with, if someone was expecting something from me, they'd know which days I was in, which days I wasn't in. Same with like staff too. Like sometimes, I wouldn't be in, and I would go and check in with them the next day to see what happened. I would always check my email. Just because I wasn't at work didn't mean I shouldn't check my email and see if there wasn't anything important going on. And sometimes I would respond to patrons or staff members, even if it was, my day off or a day that I wasn't there. That way I could stay connected. And it only took a few minutes every day to scan through the emails. But mostly I tried to let everyone know, what my hours were, so that they knew when they could expect things from me and they could expect to see me. And it worked pretty well, and people were very understanding, because there are a lot of part-time employees in the library world.
To Larissa's point, we have a unified master schedule that is on Google Drive that everyone can view. I actually started doing it during COVID for like disease exposure, so I would know who was in the building if someone got the COVID. But we kept it because now we can kind of see if someone's here or if they're working remote that day, or like we have a lot of part-time staff here too. So what day they'll be in next if someone's looking for them. Also, if you're a part-time person who works directly with patrons and you're comfortable, you could, put an auto response up on your email the days you're not there saying when you'll next be in. So even if you're not checking your email, they're getting a response that says, oh, I'll be back on Friday or whatever. So you don't necessarily have to, if you're not able to check your email while you're not there or something. But I think like, it seems like every other issue, this is just a communication thing, right? So make sure that, like Amanda said, if we do any policy changes or anything library-wide happens, we always send an email to all staff so it's there in their inbox when they come back. And then just letting patrons and staff know when you'll next be around. And then also if you're part-time, like remember you're getting paid to be part-time, you're not getting paid to be working the same hours as everyone else. And it's like okay to not be available when you're not on the clock. That goes for full-timers too, but like I try really hard not to bother someone if they're off unless it's a real emergency, like we don't have any lights, don't come in tomorrow kind of emergency. Or if we have a building closing and I need, something, we have limited staff who access our social media by design so that there are only certain people posting to it. So there would be times where I'd have to ask someone maybe to do a posting. But other than that, we really try not to bother anyone who's not here. So that master schedule really helps us because we have 40 staff here. So it's kind of hard to remember who's in and who's not. We have various floors and service desks and stuff. And I think like being comfortable putting up an auto response that says, yeah, I'm not here today. Sorry, I'll be back in 2 days or whatever is good too. But make sure you set your boundaries too. And you're not too available. The only person who should be available all the time is the director or any other member of admin. But in general, when you're not at work, it's okay to not be working.
Do you think there's also the flip side of that, which is the responsibility and kind of the ownership when you are in the building to check your email, to check other means of communication, and even maybe if need be asking like, hey, I would love if you're really, really part-time saying, could I come in, could I clock in a half hour early so I can go through the emails and see what's going on in the building? And maybe the answer is no, but it is helpful to be able to catch up and know what's going on for sure.
All right, great. So Dylan asks, are there any extra steps you can take while in library school to prep for job hunting, taking into account already working in a library? Tara.
Visit a lot of libraries, talk to lots of other people working in libraries, and read strategic plans. You can read board minutes too, to just kind of get a feel for what's going on and like how things flow. If there's a particular library you're interested in applying to, go on their website and see if their strategic plan is there, if their board minutes are there, and get as much information as you can. Yeah, and then just like I said, visit a lot of libraries, talk to people in libraries. If you're already in Buckles and you can join a committee, that's a great way to meet people too. So
I was going to say also like shadow people in other departments. Like if you're not already doing that, ask if I can like sit with you for an hour and see what you do. Or even like, at other libraries, like if you reach out to somebody and say like, oh, I'm interested in, young adult, can I sit with you, this Saturday afternoon or something? And just like, so that you have more experience and you know about more things that you may get asked about on an interview.
When I was in library school, I know it was a long time ago, but they did have an internship program. And I did an internship for like a month, and that was a lot of fun. It was a good way to see, what a corporate library was like, because that's what I was at that time, that's what I was interested in. I don't know if the library schools still have internships, but it's an internship program, but it's worth asking. There might also be, I don't know if there still are some temp agencies that specialize in librarians, and you can get a job, you can get like a short job through one of those. Sometimes those lead to full-time jobs. That actually happened to me after I graduated library school. My first job came from a temp job. So it might be a good way to try out different libraries and different types of libraries. If that, I don't know if that's still available. I think it is.
Yeah, getting out of the building is huge. Look, going anywhere you're, anytime we're in a new place, my family laughs at me because I'm like, oh, the library, and they'll go get a cup of coffee and I'll go in. Anytime you can visit a library, do it.
I love showing people around. I love having people come sit with me for a little bit so I can show them how things work. So like, honestly, if you're interested in reference or YA, you can reach out and hang out with me for a little.
Yeah. And again, I think that's one of the nice things about Buckles is that, again, everybody has basically worked with everybody because of that incestuous nature. So because of that, I think everybody is much more inclined to help each other because the pool is so small. All right. Any other questions? Otherwise, I mean, I could throw a couple of other ones out there to the panelists. But if there's anything in particular that anybody would like to know, I guess while we're giving people some time, does anybody want to touch base on the panel about work-life balance, about how to shut off work when you're at home?
I took my email off my phone.
Smart.
Like I took my Buckles email, like I don't have Buckles email on my phone. If I really want to check it, I put my Google Chrome on incognito mode so I can log in. And I do sometimes, but I try really hard not to.
I don't have any good advice for this one. I'm sorry. But also, if you're a director, you're on call basically like all the time.
Right.
But I will say the flip side of that is my schedule's really flexible and I'm a single parent. So for me, that's huge. It's just like if a pipe bursts at 2 a.m, I need to like call myself in here. But yeah, just do your best. It's hard in certain positions. But if you're a person who's not on call, then yeah, if you're not working, you don't need to be checking your email or responding to messages that aren't true emergencies. That's a boundary you need to set for yourself.
Exactly. And again, this is not a hospital. Unless the place is on fire, there's really no need for you to be involved in the library when you're not scheduled to be here. Again, being a director is a little bit different. There's different expectations, but any other staff member other than admin, it's hard mentally to shut it off, but yeah. From the director's perspective, I don't expect my staff to be at my beck and call when they're not scheduled to work. In fact, I feel really guilty if I have to reach out to them. Like my maintenance guy's only part-time, but when I reach out to him to tell him about something, it's like, I'm so sorry to bother you, but yeah. Okay, so Christine asked, I'm in my first semester of library school and getting into my group has been a struggle as I also work full-time. Any advice? This is hard, working full-time and going to library school. It is no joke. Those of you who have done it successfully, does anybody want to share?
Yeah, I would come home. Well, so I'm really old. I did my degree remote, like one that was like a very novel idea. But I would come home from work. I actually worked full and part-time and I took 4 grad classes at a time. I don't recommend doing that. But what I would do is come home from work and like lock myself in another room. And now I was at school and I just do all my schoolwork. I gave myself Friday night off and that was it. But you have to, like, for me, I needed structure. Like that's just the way I am. So I would set aside specific times that were just for school. I did not have the type of manager who would let me do anything school related at work. I know some managers don't mind if their staff are checking email or working on something for school. If they're at a desk and it's slow or something. I did not have that opportunity. So I did 0 schoolwork at work. But I would come home locked myself in a room, and then I was at Drexel University. And then when I came out of the room, I was home again. That's what worked for me, but it's really hard. Just remember, this is a very short period of time, and you're going to make a lot more money when you finish your degree. And that was like the carrot for me that got me through it, honestly.
I wouldn't worry about grades either, quite frankly. Just pass. That's all you need to do, because your GPA, when you're applying to jobs, you know, with your graduate degree, like nobody cares about that. As long as you get the degree, that's all that matters. So
I was gonna say that, don't like have like super high expectations for yourself. Like, you know,
That's
you
really
do the
good
best you
advice.
can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I cared too much, and I had an awesome GPA, and nobody has asked me for it ever. I'm still salty about it.
So my husband, when he went to library school, he got straight A's. And I was like, you don't have to get straight A's. Like, it's okay if you get like a few B's. Like, it's not a big deal. But
However, scholarship opportunities.
right.
So I do, there is the, you know, the blessing and the curse of that. Like, it's totally true. But I did get a couple of scholarships that helped me finish more quickly because I could take more classes. So I just the flip side of that.
Right.
But I do think, like, giving yourself a schedule, and this is when, and talking to your supervisor, happens to be me, about doing your schoolwork when you are at work are good things to do, because your schoolwork is going to benefit the library ultimately. So.
Okay.
Oops, sorry. And just give yourself a break, like give yourself time to adjust. I mean, we're not even all the way through September. The semester just started. It's going to take a little while.
So as we wait for other people to put in any other questions, I just want to plug Buckle Scholarship Program. Oh, Dave's not here. Or Adele, do either of you want to, on behalf of Buckles, talk about the Buckle Scholarship Program?
I would love to talk about that. The
Okay.
Buckle Scholarship Program for over 20 years has provided scholarships to students who are working in Buckles libraries. We have a few winners in this group today. The annual Buckles Scholarship Breakfast this year is on October 18th. It's at Seasons in Washington, Township of Washington. It's a really great opportunity to give back to the community. And these scholarships, this year we gave 7 scholarships. It's amazing, and it really does help. So if you want to donate gift cards to it, great. If you want to donate a basket, if you want to come to it and spend the money, please do. And you can also donate at any time of the year. But I would encourage anyone who's going for their degree, who's working in a Buckles library, to please apply. The applications go up March, I think. Is it, Darlene? March?
Yes, I'm sorry, it's the beginning of February, and the applications are due like mid-March.
Due mid-March, okay. And it's a really great committee also. The committee has various people on it, some of whom are also former scholarship winners. So I do encourage everyone to look into it at any point that they can. Thanks.
All right, great. I guess if anybody doesn't have any other questions, do any of the panelists want to give any final words of wisdom or any other basic advice to the attendees today?
I think something that I've learned over the years is to be as self-motivated and just interested in new ideas as you can be. Because if you're not self-motivated, I feel like you get into a rut, and also work can be very boring if you don't make it more exciting. So, and it definitely benefits the library and your patrons if you try new things and you are self-motivated in that way.
So to echo what Elizabeth just said, I was going to say, you will get out of this career what you put into it. You can go really far. There are a million different things you can do. You can work all over the world. You can meet incredible people and change people's lives. Or you could do the bare minimum and be like pretty miserable. And you'll still help people, maybe not as many people. Librarianship has been so wonderful to me, and I'm so grateful. I'm also so excited to see so many people coming into the field with great ideas that'll like teach us old people all this new stuff. That's really exciting. And just looking for you, it's okay to decide you want to work in libraries in a different way. I was in youth services for like 10 years and thought I'd always do that. And then one day I freaked out. I had like an epiphany and decided I didn't want to do it anymore. And I didn't think I'd like administration, and I love it. So don't limit yourself. Don't think you're going to go one way and it may never change, because you never know what could happen or who you could meet or what opportunities could present themselves. Yeah, and just stay open-minded and patient, and remember that we're dealing with all these humans, and everyone's life is complicated and messy and kind of hard. So to just treat people the way you'd want to be treated, and it'll make it a little easier.
I agree with everything that's been said. And I do think if you are interested in stretching your legs and doing more, if you're getting bored or too comfortable, ask, talk to your supervisor, or even better yet, come up with a few things on your own and then share them. I've done this before where I've said, I see a gap here, or I see I'd like to start working on this. And I've been fortunate to have a director say, go for it. That's a great idea. I've also been in the position years ago of having a director who said, you're new to this and your opinions aren't welcome. So, but don't give up and keep trying, and know that you have a huge support network here in Buckles. I mean, I think it's just an amazing organization.
I have to say it's been really great. I've never looked back since I went to library school. I had no regrets, and there's so much flexibility. Your hours and your job can grow as you need it to, or shrink as you need it to. You can always, like there were times I worked part-time, there were times I worked full-time, then I was part-time, then I was full-time. There's so much flexibility, and that's what's so great about it. It can be as much or as little time-wise. I mean, it's never little, but it can be, you can make it so that it fits your schedule. And that's one of the great things about it. And it's just also great being in a job where the people are so nice, and you're helping people, and people come in and they thank you. And, you have a product that sells itself. Everything's free and everyone wants it. So that's a great feeling too. So I would say, for all of you that are in school right now, you've really made a great choice, and good luck. I think you'll really love it.
And to echo some of that, again, your career will undoubtedly go in a different path than you previously anticipate. However, if you think possibly that down the road you might be interested in pursuing a position as a director in a public library, the LAMP committee will be hosting a Climbing the Ladder panel later this year, featuring just library Buckles directors. And if you have specific questions about, what does a director do? What are the responsibilities? What are the pros? What are the cons? What's a typical day? That kind of thing. Again, going into administration is a choice, but there's lots of other choices that, hopefully you've all gotten some answers about. You can have a successful career and has nothing to do with library administration. And maybe make more money potentially, if you're going into the private sector. So this is last call. Any last questions, comments? We are going to be sharing this recording with people who have registered. Shortly after this program ends, Darlene will be sending out an evaluation form. So please go ahead and fill that out and be as brutally honest as you want to be. And again, if you have any questions about libraries, about programming, about anything, feel free to reach out to any of us, any of the members of the LAMP committee, any of the panelists, any of the members of the Member Services Committee. Again, we are here to assist. And again, like everybody else was saying, good luck. Those of you who are still in library school, good luck. And those of you who are at the start of your career, good luck. Make smart decisions. And it was nice to virtually meet all of you. Hopefully next year we could do this in person. So then now we would spend the next 30 minutes eating snacks and chit-chatting. So eat some snacks at your own library or home, and we'll virtually have a snack session. So yeah, thank you guys for attending. Hope you found this worthwhile. Nice virtually meeting all of you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Take care. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Stop recording.